For centuries, the ancient battlefield was dominated by a single terrifying formation, the Greek phalanx. It was a massive, tightly packed block of soldiers, locking their heavy shields together and pointing a wall of spears outward. Charging into it meant getting skewered instantly. But it had a fatal vulnerability. The phalanx required perfectly flat ground to maintain that wall of shields. If the formation hit a slope, or if a single soldier tripped over a loose rock, the line fractured. That exposed the men to the sides, and the entire block would collapse. The early Roman Republic learned this the hard way. When they marched their Greek-style phalanxes into the mountains to fight hill tribes like the Samnites, the rocky slopes tore their rigid lines apart, costing Rome thousands of dead soldiers. To survive the geography of the Italian peninsula, Rome had to scrap the ancient world's dominant battle formation. They needed a military operating system that wouldn't shatter over a few uneven hills. By 315 BCE, they devised the maniple system. Instead of fighting as one massive, brittle block of men, the Roman army became modular. It acted like a phalanx with joints, capable of bending around obstacles and rapidly snapping back into a solid wall of shields. The maniples deployed in a checkerboard pattern, 3 lines deep, organized strictly by age and experience. The youngest, most energetic fighters stood at the front, the older men formed the second line, and the toughest, battle-scarred veterans anchored the rear. This deep structure gave Rome incredible battlefield stamina. When the young troops on the front line got exhausted, they simply filtered backward through the gaps in the checkerboard. Fresh, rested soldiers immediately stepped up to fill the line. Because the units were independent, they could also form specialized shapes for specific tasks. If they were besieging a fort, a maniple could lock their shields overhead to form a defensive tortoise, or testudo, marching straight up to the gates while deflecting a barrage of arrows. By adapting to every threat, the Roman war machines swept across the map. They secured Roman control over the Mediterranean and defeated the Carthaginian fleet during the First Punic War. Rome had engineered a standardized military machine capable of outlasting the enemy through decades of sustained conflict. This created a terrifying problem for anyone standing in their way. How do you destroy an army that is built to adapt? You find a general who completely ignores their rules. Raised in Carthage, Hannibal Barca grew up listening to his father's stories of the First Punic War. He spent his life nursing a hatred for the Roman Republic and meticulously planning its total destruction. Hannibal understood exactly how the Roman maniples worked. He knew that the system's strength was also its weakness. It was highly standardized and relied on predictable drills. So, in 218 BCE, he launched an invasion that made zero geographical sense. Instead of sailing across the Mediterranean, he marched tens of thousands of men and a herd of war elephants out of Spain and pointed them directly at the freezing, jagged peaks of the Alps. He relied on sheer psychological shock. By forcing an army through a route no one believed was physically possible, he bypassed the defensive logic of the Roman Republic entirely. Dragging heavy infantry and war elephants through snowy mountain passes exacted a brutal toll. His men suffered frostbite, starvation, and constant attacks from local mountain tribes. When Hannibal finally descended into northern Italy, his army was vastly smaller and completely exhausted. The Roman commanders, relying on their standardized tactics, marched out expecting their modular system to easily absorb and crush the invader. But Hannibal turned the Roman system's predictability against itself. He used fake retreats to lure the disciplined maniples into tight valleys and narrow corridors, where they couldn't cycle their troops or maintain their formation. Once they were trapped, Carthaginian troops crushed the Romans from all sides. For 15 straight years, Hannibal marched across the Italian peninsula, annihilating multiple Roman armies on their own soil. Rome could build legions, but Hannibal broke them faster than the state could train them. He successfully short-circuited the machine. Hannibal proved that unpredictable, unorthodox brilliance could tear standardized military perfection to shreds. But Hannibal's entire strategy rested on one assumption. He believed that as he destroyed Roman armies, the Italian territories surrounding him would surrender and join his side. They didn't. Rome's strength lay in its societal resilience. The Republic absorbed tens of thousands of casualties, raised new armies from its citizens, and simply refused to admit defeat, even as Hannibal sat at their gates. General Scipio Africanus pivoted. He bypassed the stalemate in Italy and landed Roman legions in Spain and North Africa, targeting Carthaginian power directly. With his homeland suddenly under siege, Hannibal was trapped. After 15 years of victories in Italy, he was forced to abandon the peninsula and rush across the Mediterranean to defend his home city. The two generals finally clashed at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. This time, Rome outadapted its enemy. Scipio neutralized Hannibal's elephants, and the fast Roman cavalry slammed into the Carthaginian infantry from behind. Hannibal lost 20,000 men in the dirt. Refusing to surrender to the people he hated, Hannibal was hunted by the Romans for years. Finally, cornered and out of options, he drank poison to avoid captivity. Hannibal delivered 15 years of sustained victories, but Rome proved a harsh historical reality. Extreme individual genius might win the battles, but a disciplined, resilient system that refuses to quit will ultimately outlast and crush isolated brilliance.